Hello there, friends, admirers, outcasts, and whoever else may be out there listening. Welcome to the Morgue.
I'd be happy to put you there. In the morgue.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my very first episode of my Scream podcast that I'm doing called The Morgue. If you haven't already noticed, The Morgue is a little tribute to the Scream TV show. And as you can see, I've got a special guest with me today, Cecil from the horror show. Welcome, Cecil. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, not a problem. Thanks for being my very first guest on my very first Scream episode. I did do one last week for Halloween, which I'm kind of doing one called Double Scoops, but this one's more Scream related. We will venture out, which we're definitely going to be doing today, because we'll be talking a little bit about A Nightmare on Elm Street and other things related to Freddy. And the reason for that is because today's episode is about the meta concept in Scream. Now, the funny thing is, Cecil, is when I was creating these podcasts, I was writing down a list of things that I wanted to talk about for Halloween, a list of things that I wanted to talk about for Scream. And literally after I wrote down the meta concept, you messaged me and mentioned about what we should discuss the meta concept because of A Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm like, I literally just wrote that down. So it's the perfect entry to the podcast. Now, the first question I've got for you is, when you first, we'll talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street soon, but when you first watched Scream, were you familiar with the meta concept being used in horror movies?
So only insofar as I'm actually old enough to have seen Wes Craven's New Nightmare in the theater. Oh. So I saw it first, and I loved it when I first saw it. It actually, part of why it holds such a special place to me is it's the only horror movie that my dad ever went with me to go see. So I'll always remember that particular viewing of New Nightmare, not only because it was my first, but because of that as well. And so, I had that experience as far as the meta concept before Scream. I don't know that at the time I put together like, hey, this is exactly like New Nightmare was, but I knew what they were doing and stuff. And honestly, that also, I think those two movies specifically made me really want to start getting into the behind the scenes part of movies, because it's like, oh, this is a job, like this is something that people do. And I was like, oh shit, maybe I should start aiming for that, and so the meta thing I experienced with New Nightmare first in the theater.
Well, for me, the funny thing is I saw New Nightmare first, and then a couple of years later I saw Scream. We didn't get Scream in the UK till 1997. I think it was May 97. We didn't get it. Obviously, I didn't go to the cinema to see it because I was too young. So I had to wait till it came out in VHS or rental. And when I watched it, I felt like I was watching something that I've just never seen before, and with the whole meta concept. But at the same time, I didn't put two and two together that it was directed by the same person that directed New Nightmare. Even though New Nightmare had a similar concept, I think because both of them have meta in them, but they're different because New Nightmare is meta and it's supposed to be real life, with real names and stuff, and then the horror comes into it. Whereas in Scream, there is no real life actors and actresses playing themselves. So I think the meta for Scream and New Nightmare is completely different, but the same, if you know what I mean. It's strange.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying there, and I was thinking about the same thing just as you started talking about it. Scream becomes more meta, I would say, with Scream 2 with the introduction of Stab, right? Because then Scream 2, like, that's their reality, and Stab is the thing. But the fact that it is a different kind of meta, right? The original Scream, because it's commenting on the kind of movie that it is, right? So that's where the meta comes in. But New Nightmare kind of did that as well. So not only was it a real world and movie sort of mixture meta, but it also was commenting on sort of, horror movies of that ilk, at the time as well. It's just more subtle with it.
Yeah, no, I never even thought of that there. Like when you watch Scream, I suppose Scream 2 is the meta movie, or the beginning of the pure meta that's similar to Nightmare, a New Nightmare. because Scream was obviously a parody of horror films in a horror way, but then Scream 2 was the meta version of Scream 1 with Stab, etc. So yeah, absolutely. Never even thought of that. But yeah, so for me, meta began with Scream, but then rewatching New Nightmare, that's when I realised to myself, oh, it's Wes Craven. He directed Scream. I went back and watched New Nightmare, even saw Wes Craven in the movie. Bob Shea as well. I think, is Bob Shea in it? I'm sure Bob Shea's in it.
And New Nightmare?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He's Sarah Risher takes Heather to meet Bob Shea.
Yeah. So yeah, just watching that back, I'm like, this is mind blowing, and I'd love to see another movie like that. And obviously, Scream to me is probably the closest that we'll kind of get. Maybe we'll get, maybe one day. I think this is one thing I was going to ask you later on, but I'll ask you now. Do you think we would ever see a Scream movie that's set in the real world, like New Nightmare? So you'd have Neve Campbell come back, David Arquette, and then a real life Ghostface comes after them, or do you think that's too cliche?
As big of a New Nightmare fan as I am, I would love that turn, because honestly, I think the other thing has gotten, well, so you and I are going to have an interesting conversation, because I thought that the series had really fizzled out for a while, because I did not like 3 or 4 very much. Right. And I thought 5 was better. I really quite enjoyed 6 though. And so it's been a weird thing for me, but it's the problem that I have with the Scream movies is it's just stabby, slicey. Like there's not that much creativity with the kills. I thought 6, they were starting to do that. So that's kind of why I liked 6 a little bit better. But yeah, it starts to get a little samey for me after a while. So if they did that, what you just suggested, it would reinvigorate the franchise for me personally.
Yeah, I'd feel the same. Like you said about the Scream franchise, it got a little stabby. I felt like the Halloween franchise was getting that way. Michael stalking people, stabby. And then when Halloween Ends came out, for me personally, it was different, and I enjoyed it because it wasn't Michael Myers stalky, stabby. Scream, yeah, I would say that I would like to see something like that. Neve Campbell. That means that for people who are saying that Stu's going to come back, and if it doesn't come back, then Matthew Lillard can come back as Matthew Lillard, and so on, Drew Barrymore, etc. So I think that would be quite an interesting way to go.
You could very easily you could have a Ghostface in the real world try and kill the survivors from the movies, like the actors that are still around or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's an easy way to bring them back, but at the same time, it's not that far fetched of having a real life serial killer going about killing actors and actresses from a movie and trying to copy the movies. It would be.
If I could just because this is very apropos to our discussion, because I don't think I'm going to do this version, I have a really hammy version of Dylan's New Nightmare 2, where basically, or the Dylan's New Nightmare story, one of my ideas was Freddy crosses over into our world and sees that, a lot of the actors from the movies are still up and around, walking around. And so he stalks the actors from the movies because he wants to make sure that they're actually dead and stuff like that. So just something very similar. Yeah.
Again, we can talk about this anyway, but that could be another way to bring you into Dylan's New Nightmare 2, having the director of Dylan's New Nightmare be one of the victims in Dylan's New Nightmare 2.
The problem is there'd be too many people saying, why is he doing what Wes is doing? He's no Wes, that kind of thing.
Well, it is a sequel to New Nightmare, so I would let you away with it. So before we go into anything else, any more questions, I'll go into the chat because there's some people chatting away there. So we've got Vanderhoff. You're having dinner just now. We'll see when you come back. David Effrey is here. Hey guys, it doesn't get much better than the pairing of Barry and Cecil. Really looking forward to the conversation. Well, get involved, Davey. We can all have a good chat. Indoraptor's here. Gene Widdicombe is here. Robert the Wolfman is here. I actually saw him behind you a few minutes ago, I think. So hello to Robert.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, he'll just walk past a few times. Sister Pam is here. Pam, she's been excited for this episode all week. I was just watching Pam's episode, her live stream before it. She's a big Scream fan, and she does a lot of Scream content as well. She's on the Stu Lives train with me. but we can talk about that and all.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been wanting to give my thoughts on that.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about that. And I think everyone's just saying hello to each other. McAvoy Productions, how are you doing? I'm doing well. Batshit Scary? No, you're not late. You're only a couple of minutes late. We've not really got into much yet. And Dude is here as well. How about this? A killer targets the cast of the original Scream film due to the death that occurred during the fan convention. Yeah, that's kind of similar to what we were kind of talking about. Cynthia's here. Hello, Cynthia. And Pam says, Stu lives. Absolutely. Stu lives indeed. So one thing I want to ask everyone who comes on to, this will be a quick answer. One thing I want to ask people that come on to the Scream podcast is, what's your favorite scary movie?
Actually, it's my favorite scary movie is probably it's between one or two. You know,
I'll take two.
The first one that I saw that I have always loved and always will love and put me down the path of liking a particular subgenre is Jaws, and I love shark movies as a result of it. But you know, the more traditional horror movie response would be John Carpenter's The Thing. That's my favorite scary movie.
Right. Well, I think both of them are acceptable. I'm not a huge fan of Jaws. I think Jaws is really good, but it's never broken into my top 10 for some reason. And I don't know if it's because I feel like it is a fake movie. Obviously, everything's fake, but it's...
Well, I mean, you are a Halloween fan, so there's no accounting for taste, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding.
I know you. And also, The Thing is probably my top 3. So
nice. There you go.
Absolutely acceptable. That's fine. So yeah, it will be interesting to hear what people say is their favorite scary movie. I think The Thing is probably going to be a popular one. I'm sure.
I'm sure Halloween is going to be a massively popular one, especially if they're going to be guests here.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying to split it up a bit so that Halloween fans can certainly go to the Halloween podcast, but maybe Scream fans will come to this one. But again, everyone's welcome, especially Scream fans for this one. So let me just check something.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's cross-contamination with the fans too. I'm sure there's some that like both, you know.
Both. Well, I did go through a phase where I'd have a lot of Halloween fans coming on for the Halloween content, but I think as soon as they heard that I liked Halloween Ends, I think they started to scatter. So that's fine. I don't mind that. I just have to be honest. It's something that I have to do. The next thing I was going to ask about meta was, I don't know how old you were. I'm not going to ask if you don't want to know, if you don't want to say. But did you get the meta? Did you know it was meta as you were watching, not just Scream, but New Nightmare?
You know, I don't think so. I don't think I knew kind of what meta was yet. It was just like, oh, this takes place in the real world for New Nightmare. You know, I was like, oh, that's cool, right? Because it's Heather, it's Wes, it's Robert, you know, it's all of them playing themselves. Everyone plays themselves in that movie except for, you know, the more background characters and Dylan. Yeah. You know, and so I'm sure Julie wasn't actually named Julie either, but for the most part, that's the way of it. And so yeah, I didn't really get that it was commenting on, you know, the genre itself, and I guess I just didn't know there was a name for it for a little while. I don't know exactly when I became aware of the name, but I think once Scream came out and the film journalism started to bandy about the term meta as a result, I think that's probably when I became more aware and would have been like, oh, so like New Nightmare too. Okay. You know, that kind of thing.
How is this for a coincidence? Is Julie the babysitter of Dylan?
Yes.
Yeah. How is this for a coincidence? Julie plays the mother, Emma's mother, in the Scream TV show.
Oh, there you go. That's funny.
Well, the Morgue, there you go.
I don't know if I ever. I probably would have like seen her when I watched the Scream show and been like, "Why does she look so recognizable?" And I just never figured it out.
That's why I checked out, because I was watching the Scream TV show and I'm like, Emma's mum looks very familiar. And then I went to IMDb and there she was. It was Julie from New Nightmare. I'm like, there you go.
That's awesome.
It's kind of a Wes Craven kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a common pool.
Exactly. And obviously that's why we're here. We're talking about meta stuff.
Absolutely.
When movies like New Nightmare and Scream we spoke about this a little bit off air. Did it influence you in terms of how you wanted to start making movies, regardless of what age you were?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I saw that, you know, in those movies that it's what people did as a job, I was like, oh, cool. And the fact that it was introduced, like, that's the weird thing, right? The idea of making these kinds of or making movies, period, for me was introduced in horror movies. Like, I'm sure there were similar, you know, movies about movies being made before that in other genres and whatnot, but the first two big examples I have were in the genre that I love the most. So I was like trying to, well, not really trying to, but just like, you know, assimilating as much as I could as I watched them repeatedly, and like, oh, so, you know, there's two guys that are in charge just of the mechanics of this glove, you know, and there's a whole dude that's in charge of the smoke in the, you know, in the environment for the set, and just like all that shit. And it was just like, oh, okay, so I want to do the West thing because I have a lot of ideas and I want to tell stories like Wes did, and everyone was literally hanging on Wes's words in the script, you know what I mean? And so I've always wanted to be able to tell a story like that, you know, that entertains people. And so it was like, here's how you can do it without actually saying that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. When it comes to certain movies, especially in the Scream franchise, do you think there can be points where there's a little bit too much meta and you feel like it's forced upon you?
So I think that would have been the case had they continued the series as rapidly as they started them, right? I think they took a long enough time in between 3 and 4 that there was enough that had developed in cinema that there was more to talk about on the meta level. And same thing between 4 and 5. It was like another 10 years, right? So again, there was enough of a shift in cinema and enough of an emergence of new things. And again, because those 10 years, things had to change in the horror genre in order to not be what it was the previous decade. And that happens, you know, about every decade in the genre. And that luckily, Scream is the film series that deconstructs that. Now, where I think they're going to run into issues is there was less of it in 6, and I think there'll be even less of it in 7 if they try and crank it out as quickly, right? Because they're not going to be able, there's not going to be as much to comment on that way.
Yeah, I feel like there might be, like you said, even less in Scream 7 because they're focusing on Sydney. I'm assuming it's going to be with Mark and the family, so it might be a more intimate movie, but it's more close-knit, isolated. Maybe there's not going to be a lot involving the meta. But going back to Scream 1 and 2, I think the meta was building up, especially with Stab coming out. And then when it got to Scream 3, and like you said, the first 3 movies came out very close together, that by the time Scream 3 came out, when I was watching it, it got a little bit comical with the meta. And I think that's maybe why a lot of people don't like Scream 3 as much as the other ones, because there was too much comedy, too much focus on the meta, because they knew the meta worked in 1 and 2, so they just had to crank it up. The best thing they could have ever done was wait until 2011 to do something fresh. Although the meta was there, they'd done it again like they did in Scream 1. It gave us time to breathe and then do it again, and then Scream 5. For me, though, I think the meta in Scream 6 didn't work, personally. I think it was focused too much on one character, and that was Mindy, and she was given the audience it too fast. What did you think of that?
So, yeah, I mean, at some point, those characters, and it's probably why Randy got killed off, those characters can know too much too early. And I think that's the case with Mindy, and they're just not willing to sacrifice any of the core 4, so to speak, right? So keeping Mindy around where she's just going to keep knowing what's happening, you know, to me, the only way to make that the only way to keep that character interesting is to make them the fucking killer, because they know how it all works, and they think, because they know how it all works, they think they can elevate it to another level, right? They think they can do it different where it won't be the same thing because they're the only one that's been smart enough to crack the code. You know, it feels like that's what that kind of character would eventually end up doing within this franchise to keep them interesting. But I just don't think they're going to have the balls to do it because they're the fan favorites, right? And they don't want to turn their hero heel because then you lose the audience. But I think it's just the more interesting way to go after a certain number of movies doing the same goddamn thing.
Yeah, change it up a bit. And I think the closest we may get to someone who knows a lot and becomes a killer could be Kirby. You know, she is a fan favorite. She knows a lot of movies. She was supposed to be the new Randy when Scream 4 came out. And there's still a chance. At one point in the film, I thought she could be the killer in Scream 6. Turns out she wasn't. But there was that little instance you're like, oh, wait a minute, it could be Kirby. That's interesting. And I would like that.
It would make sense because, like, what would kind of be interesting is if it was, if the ghost faces in the new movie were either people whose lives have been ruined by ghost faces throughout the years. And so they're like, they're crazy and they think the only way to end it is to kill the person that started it, you know, and maybe that's why they're after Sydney and stuff now. You know, I just think that it's every time they have to crowbar in someone else that has a quote unquote personal connection to the people involved, you know, it's less and less effective. But you know, so.
What we'll do is I'll go back into the chat because I did ask you what your favorite scary movie was, and I'm sure people were telling their scary movies as well.
Sure.
So it looks like people are agreeing with you. Jaws is amazing, of course. Dude, he likes all Jaws films, even Jaws 4.
I do too, dude. I love The Revenge.
There you go. So there's fans. Justin Ritchie's favorite is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm sure that's the first one because Chain and Saw is split up. Jamie's is, well, first you said scary movie there. My favorite scary movie is Amityville 2: The Possession. That was a creepy movie. You seen that one?
I have, but it's been many, many years. But as I understand it, that's the one that tells the story of the original killer, right?
Yeah, Ronnie DeFeo. Yeah, and it's got what's his name, Paulie from Rocky in it.
Oh, okay.
He's the dad. That was a good film. We've got Tommy Quinn says Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974. Number 2. That's your number 2. Vanderhoff says Showgirls. I know what you mean. Absolutely frightening. McAvoy Productions said Pet Sematary was my scariest and Halloween one. Yeah, that Zelda from Pet Sematary in 1989. Oof, she gave me nightmares.
I tell you what, you know, Pet Sematary never scared me. I saw it once as a kid, and it just wasn't one that got to me. But I watched that scene because I was compiling a list of TikToks because I just wanted to present the saddest scenes in horror on a TikTok series, and so I naturally know that scene in Pet Sematary is, you know, notorious for being one of people's saddest scenes, and I watched it for the first time after having my son, who's now 3.5 years old, which was, you know, he's not far off of the size of Gage. Yeah. And holy shit, did that scene hit so differently having a son. I my mouth dropped and I was like, you know, like it just was holy shit. No wonder people think that's a scary ass movie. So
yeah, and I was the exact same as you. I watched Pet Sematary when I was really young. Zelda scared me. It scared me. The whole film was great, but watching Gage going onto that road, my heart sank. I was like, oh, when I had kids, obviously, my son Jack, he's 13 now, but I watched Pet Sematary quite a few times when Jack was born, and I'm like, could you imagine being that father, watching that happen? I
absolutely would have done the same thing. Like, I absolutely would have done the same thing as him if it was an option.
So would I. And obviously, little Gage grew up a little bit, and he was in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Miko Hughes.
Yeah, little Gage. I was texting with little Gage just this morning.
Yeah, is he doing okay?
He is. He's doing great. Yeah, he's excited about the progress that's being made. So
excellent. The first movie I seen Nico Hughes in was Kindergarten Cop. He was iconic in that.
Absolutely, and that's the line that's recited the most to him at conventions. He's told me that, but I loved him in quite a bit. I was actually a huge fan of him in Mercury Rising.
Me too.
And Spawn. Like, I love those two movies growing up. So I was such a big fan of Miko before any of all of this was even a sparkle in my eye.
Yeah, same. Also, I don't remember this movie too much. He was in a film called Clock Stoppers, I believe, in 2002.
I think I was 22 at that time. If it put the age together, if you want guys to find my birthday, but yeah, I was a bit too old for Clock Stoppers at the time, so I didn't catch that one.
It's the same with me. Like I saw it, but I wasn't really paying attention. But I just only watched it because I knew that Miko Hughes was going to be in it, so I thought may as well watch it.
You know what I realized? Sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off. I keep having things. But he was Tom Hanks's kid in Apollo 13.
He was.
I watched Apollo 13 recently. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, holy shit, Miko was in that too. Like, I'd totally forgotten.
The people Miko Hughes has worked with: Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, Bill Paxton, you name it. He's worked with the best.
The fact that he gives me the time of day is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that you're nothing, but yeah, it's
no, I'm saying comparison.
But the fact that he's willing to do, I mean, he's worked with Wes Craven, of course. But the fact that he's not only willing to work with you, he's willing to come back and reprise his role as probably, to me, because I love horror, his most iconic role in his filmography. Would you agree?
I agree with that. I think a lot of people might say Pet Sematary because of the blue getup and everything, but personally, I think the pajamas are even more iconic, and the fact that he got, he got to wear knives for a scene, and like he was the son of Heather Langenkamp, who is horror royalty. You know what I mean? So I definitely agree with you. I think that New Nightmare, and I think he says New Nightmare was his best experience on one of those sets. He had the most fun on it, but yeah, I think that was his most iconic role. Personally, yeah.
You know, when you get older, you obviously lose your memory and you forget things when you're younger. But when you see actors as young as Miko Hughes, I wonder if they will always remember because they were filmed and they get to watch these movies over and over again. And you know yourself, if you watch a video of yourself from years ago, you remember that day because you've watched that video a few times. And him would be the same as being a really young kid.
So you'd think so, right? But we're looking at it from the outside, right? How many specific incidents at your regular job are you going to remember? Like Miko, and also Miko was really young, especially for Pet Sematary. He doesn't remember a single thing about the Pet Sematary set, really.
Yeah, well, he was only 2 when he was filming, wasn't he?
Maybe 3 or something. Yeah, 3 or 4, maybe. I don't know. I can't even say for sure, but you know, it's hard for actors sometimes to even. Like I watch, I'm starting to watch the Talkville podcast with Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling. They talk about Smallville, so Talkville, and they played Clark and Lex Luthor, and so they are just trying to remember stories, and like there are moments in the show that make them remember certain stories. So I do think that happens, but maybe not as much as we think it might happen for actors.
Yeah. No. I watch Michael Rosenbaum's Inside of You.
Yeah.
And he talks about Urban Legend quite a lot because Urban Legend is one of my favorite slasher movies. And he talks about it with fondness because he loved filming it. But I did read an article from years ago when Jared Leto was doing an interview and someone says to him, "Oh, how was your experience working on a slasher movie like Urban Legend?" And he's like, "What's Urban Legend?" He's like, "Well, the slasher movie that you done in 1998." It's like, "I wasn't in a film called Urban Legend. Don't know what you're talking about." And they're like, "Are you joking?" He's like, "No." And I was like, "What? Surely he's joking." So if actors as an adult forget movies that they're in, then we can forgive someone like Miko Hughes for forgetting his experience on Pet Sematary at 3 years old, you know?
True. Yeah. If you ask Lance Hendrickson about his time on Piranha 2, he'll deny he was in that too, but that's for a completely different reason.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the reason why Jared Leto said he's not in Urban Legend, because he probably thinks it's terrible, but I love it. So he should be proud of that one. I
love that movie too. Yeah. That was always a great one. That one scene with Brad Dourif where he yells about the back seat is fucking iconic.
Oh, amazing. That's in my outro on my videos.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's right. It is.
Love it. Yeah. So just come back to the chat here. Dude says, wait for it. I actually prefer Scream 3 to Scream 4. That's not a bad take anymore. I still prefer
Yeah.
Scream 4, but
I've heard a lot of people come around on Scream 3. I
I've seen
I still haven't tried it again in a while. I hate the bad guys that like aren't tied to anything. And he, like, yes, he's tied to everything, but only because he says so at the very end. It's not like, you know, that kind of
Well,
thing.
that's precisely. I said that on Pam's channel on her live, that the reveal of Roman being the killer as well as being the brother of Sidney is almost identical to the reveal of Pamela Voorhees in Friday the 13th. You're like, Sidney's looking at him going, "Who are you?" And there's no interaction between them. And then when you look at Pamela Voorhees saying, "Hey, there, I'm Pamela," like, who? So it's like the audience don't get a chance to guess. Maybe you could guess it's Roman, but you wouldn't guess that Roman was the brother of Sidney Prescott. So, I mean, Roman was okay, but I think the idea of the motive behind it and who he was related to, that's what took me out of Scream 3.
Well, and I think that was a necessity, right? Because wasn't Scream 3 the leaked script issue, or was that Scream 2?
I think Scream 3 had a leaked script and they changed it.
And so they had to change the ending at like the last minute. So of course the ending we got is apparently the weaker ending to what was supposed to happen. I don't know what was supposed to happen though.
I think Angelina was also the killer in one of the scripts, played by Emily Mortimer. She was playing Sydney in Stab 3.
Oh.
So she was another killer. So she was the girlfriend of Roman, and
that would have been interesting.
Yeah, they were, because there was always going to be two killers, but they changed it in the last minute. Obviously, with the Columbine issue as well, they changed it completely. So there was a few different rewrites. And I did read that Wes Craven was actually changing the script on the day of shooting sometimes as well, for a couple of reasons. One, he didn't like some of the things that he put on the script. And two, he was scared in case the leaks get out for when the movie came out. So he was writing some things on the day so that it wouldn't get out. So crazy. I did read, Jamie said Scream 3 is my favourite of the series. Now, that's quite rare, but again, everyone has a favourite, and why not Scream 3?
Often it's the first one they see.
That's possible, yeah. I mean, my favourite Halloween is obviously Halloween, but my second favourite is Halloween H2O, and that was the first one I really focused on as a young teen, so it's fun memories.
I think I saw 6 in the theater, and then I for sure saw H2O in the theater. That was the first one I really remember seeing. That's why H2O I think is my favorite one in the franchise, behind the very first one. Yeah, but you know, it's just some franchises, even though your first one you saw was not the first one, you still can clearly see that the first one is the best one. And so your follow-up is usually the first one you saw. If that's not your favorite, that's usually why. But so anyway,
that's quite similar to all the films, all the franchises for me as well. Like, my favorite's usually the one I see at the cinema first. If it's the first one, and if it's not the first one, it's usually my second best, the first one. Indoraptor says Scream 5 is my favourite of the franchise. I think Scream 5 is the one that's kind of gone down for me. I really enjoyed it to begin with, and I still like I like all the Scream films, but I think 5 is kind of going down a little bit for me. I don't know why.
I liked it because there were stakes. You know, I like it when these movies have stakes, and we lost a big character in 5. And so that I actually liked. How it happened, I wasn't the biggest fan of. And between 4 and 5, I feel like there was lots of times where a really slight person was indicated to be a lot stronger than they could possibly be in reality. So that doesn't sit well with me for those two movies. But you know, I did like 5 because there were stakes. That was an issue I had in 6. Even though I enjoyed it, there were no stakes because everyone was totally fine, in spite of being stabbed 47 times, you know? Yeah.
Well, I did notice as well in Scream 6, the last kill that wasn't a killer was an hour and 7 minutes into the film, and that was Gail's boyfriend, whoever he was, Brooks. He was the last kill in the movie, and there was still 50 minutes to go. And even at that, the only people that really died were secondary characters, like the 3 guys at the bodega, characters that you didn't really care for. So yeah, there was absolutely no stakes for Scream 6. Scream 5, though, when Dewey got killed, I went to the cinema to see it with my wife, and we looked at each other like, holy shit, that's amazing that they've done that. But then when we find out who actually killed him, I was like, oh, he died
Yeah.
for that. What? And so
Yeah.
I didn't like how he died because of who killed him, but I absolutely thought it was balls to the wall crazy that they had the balls to do that. But
I think if you once you go for a certain period of time, again with a legacy sequel, like I think you need to do that. You need to shake it up, or else it's just too samey, for each new installment.
Yeah, and I think that's why this comment's quite interesting. I think Kirby is a secret Ghostface killer. Never say never. I think that would be a good idea. Pam said as well, I definitely thought Kirby could have been Ghostface. I would love to see that. So there is still a
She should
chance.
team up with Stu for part 7.
Well, if it's Kirby and Stu, then I'll probably faint and I'll love it. And I don't care how bad the movie might end up. I'll be like, I love this. This is great.
They're a secret Bonnie and Clyde, and no one knows it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I was going to do at the end of every episode of my Scream podcast would, until Scream 7 comes out, is will Stu return? But I feel like we're getting to that point at this moment in time. What do you think? Do you think Stu will return? And would you like to see him return?
I don't have the issue with it that a lot of people do. I personally the TV fell on his face, but we didn't really see the depth at which, we didn't see if his face, went all the way through the screen, or if it just fell and that's where the sparks came from, his internal shit. But even if he did, a cut up face is fine. We didn't see him get electrocuted and shake. There's ways to ride around that. There really is.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fine. And I love Matthew Lillard. So seeing him come back, I thought the Scream homage in FNAF was ridiculously stupid and out of place, but it was still fun to see. But yeah, no, I mean, just because of Matthew Lillard alone, I would love to see Stu's return. I think he could have a real good time with it.
See, that's why I want to see him back, because not only is Stu a great character, Matthew Lillard is quite infectious as an actor, and I think it would be great to see him return in the role that kind of made him as an actor. It'd be great. And like you said, the TV falling on his face, obviously it can kill someone, but it wasn't a Dream Warriors style face smash into the TV. So people have, look at Scream 6, Chad survived 475 stabs.
Exactly.
Mindy survived a stab, a twist in a pool. And you're like, well, if you can survive that, maybe they're telling us something. Maybe they're saying to us, they're all surviving, so Stu's alive. So I certainly believe it can be. I've had a lot of comments from people saying, if Stu is not in Scream 7, we're going to laugh at you. I'm like, well, why? I want him to be in Scream 7. If he's not, then maybe he'll be in Scream 8. And so on and so on and so on. So I always say he's coming back regardless. But
never say never, especially since his popularity is on the uptick again with FNAF, There's no reason why they wouldn't want to capitalize on it, especially when there's so many fans that won't shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah. I think it also gets to a point where if we keep on asking for Stu to come back, it's the obvious thing to happen, so that if it happens, people would say, well, we knew that was going to happen. But I would still be surprised.
They'll complain because it's like, well, that's nothing surprising. We knew that was going to happen.
Yeah. I know. So no one's going to be happy. Well, not no one. There's going to be a group of people that won't be happy, and there'll be a group of people that will be happy. That's just kind of the way it goes, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to a little bit of New Nightmare this time. And for you, what do you feel? I know that I was going to ask you your influence for Dylan's New Nightmare. Of course, the biggest influence is New Nightmare. But
my biggest influence for Dylan's New Nightmare was actually Showgirls.
Absolutely frightening.
So sorry, I interrupted. See, that's the thing. I do too much interrupting. It's the host.
No, it's fine. I like it when people interrupt me because I talk rubbish anyway. But your influence for Dylan's New Nightmare was obviously as a sequel to Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I don't think I know this, but is A Nightmare on Elm Street your favourite movie in the Nightmare franchise, or is it New Nightmare, or what's your kind of?
At this point, at this point, I have to say New Nightmare is my favorite. It was definitely one of the ones I revisited the most. I would revisit 3 and I would revisit New Nightmare. I love them all. I very much am of the kind of Oh, I don't love them all. I enjoy them all. I can be
Yeah.
entertained by them all. I can watch any of them at any time. And it's the same with the Jaws movies. You know, some of those are questionable, but I just enjoy them because they were my jam growing up. And so yeah, it was always 3 and 7 for me, and then 1 was close after that. Recently, I've gotten more on board for 2 because it's the scariest Freddy, and they did some really cool shit in it, and so. You know, a part of the makeup for Freddy and Dylan's New Nightmare was an homage to the makeup in 2. So yeah, I mean, all of them were an influence, and I'm drawing on all of them for the script for DNN 2 as well. But yeah, definitely New Nightmare being the basis for it was the biggest influence. But yeah, I love them all.
Yeah, I don't. There's none in the franchise that I wouldn't watch. Like, I know that part 6 and part 5 are usually the ones that are the lowest on people's ranking, which I don't know if they're on your lowest ranking or whatever, but they certainly are on mine. But parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 are great in my opinion. Obviously, part 1's almost a masterpiece.
Well, 3 to 5 are like the Thorn trilogy of the Nightmare movies.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, because it obviously leads up to the Dream Child and Dream Master.
And it's Alice, you know, and it's you know, obviously it's Kristen then Alice, but still it's all one story essentially across 3 movies.
Yeah. So it is quite a coherent storyline when you look at it.
Yeah.
I didn't hate Freddy's Dead. I know there's a lot of people that really hate that movie.
Dude, I grew up watching cartoons, and that to me is just the cartoon version of Nightmare. And it's very easy for me most times nowadays because I've been reading comics my whole life. So it's very easy for me to place things in just alternate universe situations. If I really don't like an installment, I don't have to consider it canon if I really don't want to. Yeah. Or even if it's considered canon, great. It gives me something to bitch about, you know, fine. but it's not like I'll never watch it again. That's the thing when people are like, oh, they're doing another one of these. Can't they just let it die? I'm like, why? There's a chance it could be good. There's a chance it could be another one that you put in your rotation. There's a chance it might not be, but great. You don't ever have to watch it again if it's not. Why not, you know, why not at least give it a try, you know?
Yeah. Well, before you announced Dylan's New Nightmare, the first one of my favorite parts of New Nightmare is the look of Freddy. At that point when New Nightmare came out, I thought that was the best Freddy's ever looked, even better than part 2, which is also a great look. But there's also a scene, I'm sure you've seen it, there's also a scene in Freddy versus Jason when he comes up out of that water and he lands on the decking, and it's like an elf.
That's
amazing.
That was one of the 3 things that so it's funny. There's a little story there. When I first met Nora in person, I went out to LA to do the head casting for Dave McRae, and that was, you know, obviously years and years ago at this point. But when I first met her in person and we started, and Vince was there, it was me, it was Dave, and we were talking, and we were just like, you know, she's like, so what are you thinking about for the look? And I was like, well, I have a few looks that I specifically like the most. And she's like, okay, so for me, I kind of like part 2 and then the Demon Freddy from Freddy versus Jason. And I'm like, holy shit, those are exactly the 2 looks that I like the most as well. And so those are the 2 that we tried to mash up. That's why the eyes are sunken, and that's why there's kind of the diamond shape in the brow. That's from the Demon Freddy, and his ears are a bit pointy as well, like the Demon Freddy. So I again, to me, he's you know, my New Nightmare Freddy is just a compilation of the Freddys that Dylan has in his mind, and that's why the glove isn't quite the same as New Nightmare, because it's a mashup of what he saw as a kid and the movies that he saw as a kid. So it's all blended together in his head. But yeah, I loved the look into, and the New Nightmare look. The only problem, I loved the wardrobe for the New Nightmare look, but I'm not a big fan of just the patches ripped away of his skin kind of thing, as opposed to making it look more burned like usual, you know. That's the part that I bumped up against. That's why I went away from it in mine. But otherwise, I love the wardrobe of it. I think that's the coolest he's looked personally.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if it's whether it's intentional or not. The story is about Dylan. So as a kid, he'll be dreaming about Freddy, but then all these years later, he's probably seen in the movie, he's probably seen the other Freddy movies over and over again. So the look of Freddy in Dylan's New Nightmare could just be that culmination of how Freddy would look, and that's just his mind and how he would see Freddy being, and then coming out into the real world again. And I did say to you as well, when after I watched Dylan's New Nightmare, I had to remind myself that it's a movie set in the real world. It's a fan film that's set as a sequel to a movie that's set in the real world. So it's hard enough to get your head around New Nightmare, but to get your head around the sequel to it, you need to remember that even though Dylan is the son of Heather, Miko Hughes is not the son of Heather. Because I think some people forget that as well. Like, oh, Miko Hughes' mum is Heather Langenkamp.
It's funny. I could basically do it like what is that really shitty Oceans movie where Julia Roberts plays a character and like a character that looks like Julia Roberts. So like I could eventually have Dylan like meet Miko and they like just look exactly alike.
That would be, I wouldn't even, that would blow my mind.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. And if people ask if Ghost Jason and Neo Freddy will ever meet up, and I'm like, look, we have ideas, but how much more confusing would the reality of it all be? Like if they're in the same universe, like, so does Ghost Jason exist in the real world? But no, he exists in the Friday universe. So it gets muddy when we do that. But as of right now, it's still pretty clean.
Yeah, no, it's straightforward when you think about it, but it's a thinking person's film because you have to still think like, okay, Dylan is a fictional character within a real world. And you still have to kind of focus on, although he's fake, it's still the real world. So if Robert Englund happened to walk past, we were like, okay, that's Robert Englund, and we know why he's there. So yeah, if you ever get Robert Englund, you can let me know. That would be good.
I can't say anything about what's going on in the script for part 2.
That's fine. We'll get to that at the end. We'll maybe try to push your arm a little bit. We've got a super chat come in. What is it? Here we go. It's from Scotty Bainey, sends in $5. Thanks very much. Barry Euro and Cecil, awesome job on Dylan's New Nightmare. I was going to ask you, Cecil, how was it working with Miko Hughes? Now, before you answer the question, guys in the chat, we had a little chat before we came on air, talking a little bit about Miko Hughes being one of my favourite actors growing up as a kid, him being a kid, me being a kid, roughly the same age. I always looked up to him, even though he was younger than me. But how was it working with someone that you've watched on the screen for that many years?
First, let me say thank you, Scott. I appreciate the compliment on DNN, and thank you to anyone else that's mentioned anything in the chat. I've been just, unfortunately, I've not been focusing much on the chat.
Focusing apologies, chat.
On Barry.
I'm trying my best. Sorry.
No, it's good. I just want to make sure I hear the questions. But working with Miko was awesome. He's a consummate professional, and he definitely helped to make me a better director. I mean, I'm still pretty green at it, obviously, but he brought a lot of experience to the table. And even though he hadn't acted in about 20 years, he had worked on things behind the scenes for that entire time. So he knows how things should work on set, and he had to help us course correct a couple of times throughout the process. And I like, it's just something that I had to realize was necessary because it's going to make everything run smoother, and I need to take advantage of the experience that he's bringing to the table. So it's really good. You get a lot with Miko. He's a really good guy. He's not like, an asshole or anything. He's intense and focused on the work. And that's what you want with an actor, to be honest with you. So it was awesome. It was awesome working with him.
Yeah, I think before he'd done Dylan's New Nightmare, did he not do some work behind the camera as well? I'm sure he'd done a little bit of directing.
Yeah, he's done some stuff. I think he's done some camera work. He's done a lot of stuff. Honestly, I hesitate to say anything incorrectly, but I know he's done a few different jobs behind the scenes.
Yeah, and like we said, he's worked with some of the biggest actors in Hollywood as well. So he brings that experience as well as acting in horror films. He's brought the experience of working with the biggest actors, the biggest directors that we've seen from the 80s, the 90s, and some of the noughties as well. So having someone like Nico Hughes on a fan film, I know that people turn their nose up to fan films quite a lot because I think some people think of a fan film and think it's someone with the mobile phone and jumping about like this, and that used to be the case. But I think fan films, since Vincent DeSanti done Never Hike Alone, I think they've went right up. Of course, you're going to get still your cell phone fan films, but you know the ones that you think are going to be good, and obviously Dylan's New Nightmare is one of them. But one thing that Dylan's New Nightmare has over a lot of fan films is, and including Never Hike Alone as well, is they bring back characters from previous movies, like Tom Matthews for Never Hike Alone and Nico Hughes for Dylan's New Nightmare. Now, I think I know how you got Nico Hughes on board, but how did it all go about? Because I'm sure, I think you met him at a convention and you gave the idea to him. Is that right?
Yeah. So we for years we were the press for Mad Monster here in Phoenix. When they would come through, we would interview the celebrities there and record their panels and stuff. And so they one year they took us out to North Carolina to cover that one, and Miko was going to be a guest. And so pardon me. Okay. Normally Fuego was the one that would do the interviews, but I decided to do this one with Miko because I just wanted to add the fan film question, because I was like, well, we'd reviewed Never Hike Alone. I'd actually met Vince in person at the Mad Monster event as well. And because he actually, we met, he was there. We talked about the review that we did for Never Hike Alone, and then he ended up needing a place to crash. And so he ended up crashing at my place. And so we became friends after that. And so, God forgive me, I lost my spot real quick. Yeah. So when we were going to North Carolina to do the Mad Monster, I prepared that question and just threw it in amongst other questions I normally ask the celebrities. And it was just, hey, with the popularity of fan films increasing, if someone ever came to you with a script for something called, I don't know, Dylan's New Nightmare, would you look at it? And he's like, oh, I'd read it. I'd at least take a look at it. You never know. He's like, might be fun, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I left it at that, moved on to the next question. And then 4 months later, he came to Mad Monster Phoenix. And so I just made sure that I wrote the script in between. And then Vince came back out to Mad Monster again, and I told him about the idea, and he thought it was good enough that he was willing to lend his credibility to me and walk over to Miko with one of his Blu-rays for Never Hike Alone, and give him the script. And so we gave him the script, and he's like, "Oh, cool, yeah, I'll try and read it on the way back to LA on Monday." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then that night, like at the one of the shows that Mad Monster was putting on at like 9-10 o'clock, I was filming it for press, and Miko came up and said something to me. Like, I thought he said like, "Hey, this is a cool show, huh?" And it was really loud, so music was going. I was like, "Yeah, cool." And then he just kind of looked at me, and then went and sat back down. And when the show was done, he came over and was like, "Hey, you didn't hear me, huh?" I was like, "No, I guess not. I'm sorry. What did you say?" He's like, "I said I read the script and I really liked it." I was like, "Oh shit, really?" And so yeah, from there we just kept talking about it, and it kept I involved more and more people, and it just got we got delayed for COVID, and then it got luckily though that delay helped the film a lot. We were able to strengthen the script and make sure we had more prep time, and it ended up being a lot stronger for it.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever think though that getting Nico Hughes to say yes and then COVID hitting, did you ever get the fear in your mind where you're thinking, if this takes too long, he might pull out?
I mean, I'm sure it crossed my mind, but Miko was very excited about it. He was very nervous about it, because he's like, yeah, this whole thing kind of hangs on me. He's like, but it's cool. I like it. He's like, it could be a lot of fun. So like he was nervous because he didn't know how people would respond. He's very humble when it comes to that. You can see I don't know if you watched the Q&A after the Man Monster screening that I have on the channel, but he's very humble even during that Q&A. He's like, it's interesting that way.
Yeah, I think he's a really nice guy. And even though it was almost 30 years since shooting Dylan's New Nightmare, and he obviously looks a little bit different as well, you still feel that sense of Dylan in him when you're watching Dylan's New Nightmare. I don't know what the guy's eating because he's jacked like to Arnold. Maybe he's watching Arnold Schwarzenegger after Kindergarten Cop, but that boy is jacked to the high heavens.
Yeah, he takes good care of himself, and he wanted to make sure, like by the time the delay was over, he's like, I need 3 months. So whenever we're good to go because of the border issues that we'd been having, he's like, I need 3 months. Or if they give a date for that, he's like, just make sure I have 3 months of prep time, because he wanted to make sure he was in as good a shape as he could be, and I didn't blame him. I was like, all right, cool, go for it. And then when he showed up, looking like he did, because he was in great shape before, but he got even bigger for the movie. And I was like, God damn, dude. Well, if you did all that work, like, let's show it off in one scene at least. Yeah. And so that's why I threw that little bit in there. But
you should have done a shower scene like Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Well, I've figured out a way to include it in DNN 2, so people will be happy and it'll be showcased a little bit more. So
there you go. I'll go back to the chat. So again, apologies, chat, because we kind of get off on a tangent. We kind of missed some things. I do apologize. Indoraptor says, I got to go. I hope you enjoy your live stream. Sister are talking to each other, which is fine. Let's just go through some of them quite quickly. Simon says, Scream 4 is underrated in my opinion. I think it's the best sequel. Also, Wes's last film. It wasn't Wes's last film. It was his last Scream film, of course, but his last film was...
oh, God, it was My Soul to Take.
My Soul to Take, the one that was the birthdays.
Like one of his worst ones, unfortunately.
That was a shame. Frank Grillo was in it, which is good, but yeah, it's a bit of a shame. But although one film it did do, which was obviously years before, was Red Eye, which is one of my favorite Wes Craven movies. That's
a great one. Cillian Murphy, early Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, it's a great one. Gene said the Scream movies I like is 1, 2, 3, and 4. 5 and 6 are just okay. I feel the same. 6 is the okay one. The rest of them are good to great, of course. But again, 6 is my worst, but I still like it. And that's a testament to the franchise. 6 movies in, and for me, they haven't made a bad film yet. So
it's not as strong as the Evil Dead franchise, but it's a strong franchise.
Well, to be honest, I think the Evil Dead franchise is probably the strongest franchise. Yeah, I mean
there's not a weak one in the bunch.
No, and you probably won't like this, but the weakest Evil Dead film for me is the first one.
Yeah, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, I think Rise. I would watch Rise more regularly than 1, but I think because I'm trying to do the filmmaking thing, I think I appreciate 1 on a deeper level.
Well, of course, yeah. Rise. Yeah, what they had to do to make the film and stuff. Right, yeah, I can appreciate that as well. But I still love, like, my worst film is the first one, but I still love it to bits. Yeah. Like, amazing. So yeah, they're all really good films.
If your worst film in the franchise is still an 8, it's pretty goddamn good.
Exactly. Who else have we got? We've got Wade Effin Wilson says, this is so great to see. Barry and Cecil, hope you're both well. On holiday at the minute, but I'll catch up with this later. Hope everyone has a great one. Well, it's nice to see you coming into the chat.
Thank you, Wade fucking Wilson.
Yeah, Effin Wilson. Are you looking forward to Deadpool?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm very much looking forward to that. I think I'm looking forward to Romulus more, but but those are definitely my top 2 most anticipated right now.
Yeah, well, I've got 3. It's Deadpool 3, Romulus, and Maxine. I'm still really looking forward to Maxine.
I really liked X. I thought Pearl was good. So I'm looking forward to Maxine, but I'm prepared to not be completely blown away while hopeful that I will be.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I really like X. I thought Pearl was good, but I hope it gets better. McAvoy Productions said, Barry, I think I know what you would pick, but can you ask Cecil which movies he would pick, Halloween or A Nightmare on Elm Street? Well, I think I know the answer to that, but Cecil can answer. Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street?
Definitely Nightmare on Elm Street. I like to poke fun at the Halloween stuff. I enjoy those movies. Like, I like all slashers. And I see every single one, and I saw every Michael Myers movie in the theater after I was old enough to start seeing them in the theater. But to me, he's just the least interesting of the slashers. He's just a walking wall, like that's what I always call him, is just the walking wall. Jason at least breathes heavily sometimes, and like has a little fun with his kills. Up until Halloween Kills, Michael Myers was the same thing as Ghostface, just stabby, slicey. So he just was not the most interesting of slashers. But Halloween 1 is a triumph, and I really enjoyed Halloween H2O. I think the cornerstones of that franchise, in my opinion, 1, H2O, and 2018, like they show how to do legacy sequels correctly, and then they fuck them all up.
What's your thoughts on Ends? I don't think I've ever asked you that before.
I did not like Ends at all. I thought it was, okay. It might have been a good, like, I think Ends, the crux of the story in Ends would have been a good episode of a Halloween anthology series.
Yeah.
I think I don't mind the Corey stuff, but it should have been set up in the previous movies. I think they did a huge disservice by veering away from the Michael Myers of it all in the denouement of the Michael Myers franchise. You know what I mean? That just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. I love the meat grinder at the end, but I love the meat grinder in Texas Chainsaw 3D also. So it's like, I'm predisposed to meat grinders. I hated the fucking passing him like he's the goddamn messiah across everyone's hands.
Yeah, I find that weird as well.
That's like, I don't understand that. And it's like, so yeah, there was just a lot of really weird, bad, dumb choices in my opinion. But I thought that I only liked half of Kills. If someone made a version where you cut out all of the hospital shit, I'd be a much happier camper.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be someone that can make a super cut of all three movies. Give us most of 18. Give us all the kills from Halloween Kills. Put Corey's story at the beginning of Halloween 2018, or maybe in between, and then build it up to having, I don't know, some sort of coherence.
Just cut that shit out. Just go right to the lore of it all from Ends, and like just end Kills with the end of Ends. Like that's what they should have done.
Yeah, I can see your point. And I think a lot of people have that same opinion. Like, yes, a lot of people like Corey, but they feel like his story should have been in a different movie or an anthology, a TV show. Save it for the TV series if it eventually comes out. I think all the negatives most people share, and all the positives most people share as well. Whereas for me, I like the negatives and the positives for Halloween Ends, but that's just me. I love it.
It's the same. I'm the same way about Freddy's Dead. I know it's silly, but I like the silliness of it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that as well. David Effrey said, Evil Dead for life, and the weakest is Rise for sure. Davey loves Evil Dead franchise. And if Davey says Rise is the worst, then it's probably the worst for a lot of Evil Dead fans.
Yeah, we liked it. We did a whole review series where we had a set where it's the basement and we're like sticking out of the basement and shit, and we reviewed the whole thing. And by the end of it, after revisiting them all, I was like, damn, yeah, these are all good. But when we finished with Rise, it was just like it was really glossy. There was a lot of things that I just like, oh, there's a wood chipper in a parking garage. Okay, I wonder if that's going to come into play. Just stupid shit like that. But I loved Alyssa Sutherland. She was incredible, and I liked how it all played out. That it's very ruthless and stuff. But there was too much crammed into it that seemed forced. The chainsaw at the end just seemed totally forced, and just so that's where it kind of dropped for me. There was a lot more questionable choices in Rise than in any of the others.
I've seen it 3 times. I watched it 3 times within a month.
Oh, wow.
But I've not seen it since. And I'm kind of scared to see it again, because everything you've mentioned, I can see that as being something that would hold it back again. Like, why is there a wood chipper near a place where there's no wood? Why is there a chainsaw about as well? There's so many convenient things there that's just letting us know that it's part of the Evil Dead franchise. So yeah, I'm kind of scared to watch it again because I think it was maybe my fourth, maybe third favorite at some point. So wow. I don't know. It can change. It always changes.
If you've watched it 3 times, though, to have it changed after watch number 4 just seems like it'd be kind of strange. But again, if time, right? If the first 3 were that close together, then maybe so.
It was in the first month. Yeah, I think it was like 2 months maybe. I watched it twice in the cinema and once at home as soon as it came out on digital. But again, it can change, but you never know.
For me, a movie has to be God blessed special for me to go back to the theater to see it. Like I have too much shit to catch up on watch wise at home. I got lists upon lists of movies that I still haven't caught. I still haven't seen the most recent Mission Impossible, and that's supposed to be amazing. And there's so much to watch. Yeah. And I would rather watch horror stuff that I haven't gotten to yet. So a movie has to be fucking incredible for me to go. Like When Evil Lurks. I watched that in the theater, and then I watched it again when it came out on DVD because it fucking ruled. Yeah. And it's just one of those where you're just like, holy shit, it's something I haven't seen before. Let me watch it again, but it has to be super special for me to do that.
It's funny. Last night, I don't have a lot of time either. I've got 2 kids and work to go to and stuff. Yeah, but last night I said, I'm going to watch a horror movie so I can do a review for it because I've got it ready to review. And Trading Places came on. And I thought, I'll just watch Trading Places. I just because I've not seen that for years, and I was laughing my head off. And sometimes you kind of need to get away from horror just for a night.
Yeah, well, I have 2 sides. Like I'm very into horror, and I also very much like kids animated programming. Like it's not like super young, but like I'm going through Amphibia right now because I'm a big fan of Gravity Falls. And then I watched a couple of like the really creative shows that have smart writing. Yeah. I get into that, and so I end each day watching something animated before I go to sleep, so it kind of balances me out a little bit.
Yeah, it helps you. I deal with a lot of death in my work, and then dealing with that, and then watching horror movies as well. I'm like, I can't escape it. So sometimes I just need a little bit of some light-hearted comedy to get me by. And my wife doesn't like horror films, which is one of the big reasons I've got a channel. Because anytime I speak to my wife, and I'm like, "Oh, did you see the trailer for that horror film?" She's like, "I don't care. I don't care." I'm like, "Okay, then."
Yeah.
Chat. So I have to kind of watch other things myself.
Yeah, my lady's the same. She's not a horror person at all.
Nah. But that won't stop us, that we continue on with the horror stuff. Vanderhoff says, "You're picking on Evil Dead Rise. Have you seen Army of Darkness?" People crap on Army of Darkness quite a lot, and
it was purposefully slapsticky. Like it's not like those things that people laugh at weren't mistakes. They were done to make people laugh. Like it's a whole different ball game. Army of Darkness rules.
Yeah, Army of Darkness was the first Evil Dead movie I watched.
Oh,
and I didn't know it was part of Evil Dead because I didn't see Evil Dead until after Army of Darkness. And then I got told by friends that Army of Darkness was Evil Dead 3. I'm like, oh, so there's an Evil Dead 2 then? So I watched 3, then 1, then 2. And then obviously when the internet came around, I was reading about it. And there was a little short film called Within the Woods in 1978. And they funded the money they made for that. They made Evil Dead. Then the money they made from Evil Dead, they made Evil Dead 2. So it's just, it's a filmmaker. Obviously, you'll know this. It's a filmmaker's dream to be able to make something you're so passionate about. And that's what I want to go back to Dylan's New Nightmare. In fact, I know you can't really say much, or you don't want to say too much about Dylan's New Nightmare 2. For those of you who don't know, there is going to be a Dylan's New Nightmare 2. What plans do you have for it that you can discuss just now?
Well, I will say it's not 100% that there's going to be a Dylan's New Nightmare 2. We 100% would like there to be a Dylan's New Nightmare 2, but there's a couple of caveats that come with that now. We did Dylan's New Nightmare 1 with the intent of making it a 4 to 5 part series, with considering how long it took us to get through 1. And granted, there was a COVID delay in there, but it took us 4 years to get through it. And so I didn't want to do that 4 more times. So basically I wanted to do what Vince did with the last 3 episodes of Never Hike Alone. He combined them into what ended up being Never Hike Alone 2, a full-length feature. So that's what the plan is right now, is to combine the rest of the Dylan's New Nightmare story into one full-length feature. Now, where it gets a little sticky is something I can't go too much into, but I am currently on page 104 of version 1 of Dylan's New Nightmare 2. I am making a couple of different, there ultimately might be 3 different versions of Dylan's New Nightmare 2 when all is said and done. There is the dream, what I call the ideal version of Dylan's New Nightmare 2, which has a lot of bells and whistles, and that's the one I'm doing right now, and I love it so much. And if it were to be made, it would make Nightmare fans lose their fucking collective minds. All of them, not just new Nightmare fans. All of the fans would be happy. And again, I know that's big words. But what I'm writing right now is meant to be the ideal conclusion to the long-running story, so to speak.
Yeah.
While also paving the way for changes and new stuff in the future. So that's, I'm writing the ideal version right now, but I'm also writing a version that is very dependent on who we are able to bring in for Dylan's New Nightmare 2. I won't get any further into that, but depending on whether or not we can get access to certain things, I might need to do the 3rd version, which would be the slightly more, I would change. I have a different idea for where the story would go if we had to pivot. So right now I'm focusing on writing the first 2 versions, and I should have an idea whether or not I will be able to, or whether or not it'll be worth my time to continue those versions after June 30th. After that point, we'll have a better idea as to which direction we're going to be going. But it's happening. I'm 104 pages into the first version, and it's fucking awesome. Yeah. I really enjoy it. I read all of my detailed notes for this version to Dave McRae, and that's what he said at the end. He's like, "It's fucking awesome, dude. I can't wait to read the script." So yeah, that's where we're at as far as Dylan's New Nightmare 2. The other thing is, no matter what version of the script it is, we will crowdfund it at a high level. We're going to ask for a good amount, like Never Hike Alone 2, because think about it, a Freddy movie is way more expensive than a Jason movie if you're doing it right.
Well, you'd imagine so, with the dream sequences and stuff.
Exactly. And they asked for $300,000 for Never Hike Alone 2. So when you think about Dylan's New Nightmare 2 and to really do it right, we'd probably have to ask for like almost $500,000. Yeah. So if we raise that, we would probably do it through Kickstarter, which means if we raise that amount, great, we'll do it. If we don't raise it, it's not happening. So it'd be entirely up to the fans at that point. But, whether or not that campaign would be successful is also dependent on what factors end up being in play and what we can reveal and market with and stuff like that. So again, if this ideal version was somehow greenlit, people would pay to raise that money to see this version, for sure.
Well, I feel like I know what your ideal version would be without saying anything. And I feel like if that ideal version comes into fruition with the people you want to be there, and you announce that through Kickstarter, you will definitely make that money. I think even though Never Hike Alone, you said it was 300,000, but they did not raise way more than that.
They did.
Yeah.
They ended up raising probably closer to 4, I think.
Yeah. So I think it would be a similar thing, with the people you would want to be involved in a certain project. I think if you sold that to the fans of a Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, they would bite your hand off easily. And it would definitely raise what you needed to. I think so anyway, personally.
I don't know how much you want to know early, but if you're curious about some of the things I'm talking about, I can tell you a couple of them after the stream to whet your appetite. But if you don't want to be spoiled, that's understandable too.
Yeah. Maybe tell me a few teasers. That's Alex, because I think you were telling me before about Dylan's New Nightmare, and I'm like, nope, don't tell me, don't tell me.
Yeah, that's the thing. You were like, no, well, because we were getting close to being done. So when at that point, yeah, obviously waiting is the better thing. But if we're still a year or two out, maybe you're curious. Maybe you'll forget by the time the movie comes out.
Maybe I'm getting old, so maybe I'll forget. But yeah, we'll go back to the. What was I going to say there? Oh, I was going to say something.
Sorry, I talked too much.
No. It was me. I was just forgetting. I'm forgetting everything. It was going to be about Dylan, about A New Nightmare. It will come back to me. We've got a question for you, Cecil.
Okay.
Where is it? Here we go. Jamie has asked, "Who's your favorite director and inspires you the most?"
To me, my Mount Rushmore, so to speak, has always had three main heads and then a rotating head. But it's always been Wes Craven, Steven Spielberg, and James Cameron. James Cameron and Wes Craven probably more so than Spielberg, but Spielberg is undeniably a master of the craft and just incredible. The fourth one, the rotating one, might, in any given time, it might change. It could be Tarantino. He's the one name that's coming to me, so maybe it's Tarantino. But I do like some other people that I'm probably just not coming up with right at the moment. But yeah, those three in specific, Spielberg, Cameron, and Craven were the ones that I looked up to the most and watched all the behind the scenes I could ever get my hands on and stuff like that. So I would say those three.
Yeah, well, they're good choices. I would probably say Wes Craven, John Carpenter, possibly David Fincher, and Steven Spielberg as well. But then James Cameron, my favorite movie of all time is Titanic. So James Cameron,
mine was The Abyss for many years.
Yeah, and again, when he's focused on a film, it turns out to be some of the best work. I even love True Lies. Some people don't like True Lies, but True Lies.
I mean, fair enough, to each their own, but I've not encountered anyone that hasn't liked True Lies. It's crazy.
Lucky you. But yeah, The Abyss, Aliens, Titanic, even Avatar was really good. I've not seen the second Avatar movie.
Well, T2, Terminator 1 and 2. And that's the thing. James Cameron has the 100% best director's cuts of anyone. I love the extended version of The Abyss, the extended version of T2, and the extended version of Aliens are all superior to the regular theatrical versions, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I love those.
The good thing about James Cameron is he probably doesn't need to do director's cuts anymore, because I think whoever he works with, he'll say, "This is my movie. I will make the movie," and the studios will go, "Okay, we won't get involved. It's fine. You do."
Yeah, apparently Cameron's a real hard-headed asshole.
Yeah, but
yeah. Look what happens. He's a singular creative force that truly can't be matched. Like in popularity, the three of the top five most highest grossing movies of all time are his, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
it's nuts.
I know. So he's obviously going to make money. McAvoy Productions, I think you might be away now, so apologies if we're getting to this later. But he said, "Barry and Cecil, thanks very much. Love the stream. I'll watch the rest tomorrow. It's late here. Last question, thoughts on the new Beetlejuice coming? Night, everyone. Stay safe. Stay safe, McAvoy. What do you think of the new Beetlejuice? Have you seen the trailer?
Yes, the last trailer actually encouraged me quite a bit. It was hitting all the right nostalgia buttons for me. It really was, and I like that it's the whole Kiss kind of thing, right? Where it's harder to tell how old Michael Keaton really is when he's covered in makeup. You can still tell on them close-ups, that's for sure, but it's easier, right? That's how Gene Simmons and all those dudes get away with still rocking out, even though I think they're passing the torch or something recently, but they get away with it because they're makeuped out, and I think a similar sort of thing, but it looks so much fun, and it hits again, seeing the little model town, even seeing the shrunken headed dude, and just seeing Michael Keaton get to have fun again, and not be so serious with every goddamn role since Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Although Multiplicity, I always love Multiplicity. That's one of my favorite Keaton performances. But yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I wasn't a huge Beetlejuice fan growing up, But I do have a nostalgic connection with Beetlejuice because I did grow up watching it all the time. I had the toys. I watched the cartoon when it was out for a while. So yeah, I did enjoy.
Yeah, it's early Tim Burton, right? Early Tim
Yeah.
Burton that really was when he was defining himself as a filmmaker, and and also Danny Elfman. The score is fucking incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't remember exactly what year it came out, but I was right in the sweet spot. I was like in the 10 to 14 range, depending on what year it was. So
it came out in 88.
Oh shit, I was 8. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, still, it's right about the time where you start to watch weird, funny, it's like that's comedy horror right there. So it's a good gateway movie for someone that age.
I've got a funny feeling though, might not happen, but I've got a funny feeling that Catherine O'Hara will steal the show.
You think?
I think, yeah. I don't know if do you ever watch Schitt's Creek?
I've seen a couple of episodes. I know she steals the show apparently a lot of times, and so they might give her more screen time as a result of what happened with that show.
Yeah,
I could see that for sure.
Yeah, I feel like that might be the case. Winona Ryder looks good as well. I keep forgetting Winona Ryder is going to be in this, and
it's so funny. I think she looks younger in this than she looks in Stranger Things. Granted, they probably age make up to her a bit in Stranger Things, but it's really funny to consider that.
Yeah, no, definitely. She doesn't look old enough to have I don't know what age Jenna Ortega's supposed to be. And maybe she's 15 or something. I don't know, but yeah, she looks still too young to have a kid. It will be interesting to see her interacting with Michael Keaton again after all these years. Like just seeing them years ago. When I used to watch Beetlejuice back in the day, it was usually on at Christmas time, and I would watch Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns. For some reason, Tim Burton was the Christmas man.
Yeah.
Even though half of them were Christmas movies, apart from Batman Returns. But yeah, there was just something about his films that felt so wholesome. And seeing the trailer for Beetlejuice, it looks like a wholesome, fun time, and it might not be great, but I think I might have a good time watching it because it'll just get the nostalgic rushes going, and it'll just take me back.
Yeah, Tim Burton might not be a bad one for the Mount Rushmore either, because his films are always so singular in vision, and like I haven't seen Big Eyes and like some of the more recent ones where he's veered away from his usual style. But anytime he leans into his usual visual style, it's fucking incredible, and it feels like it's like his movies more than I think any other movies that are made feel of a different world and like of a story told world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's always interesting and always like the production value and the actual set design and all of that is so interesting in all of his movies. It's it's something to be lauded for sure.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like he's given us grounded stories in an unrealistic world. Like you look at Edward Scissorhands, you don't see, maybe you do, you wouldn't see a town like that with a man with Scissorhands, but it's grounded in that reality, but in a Tim Burton world.
Right.
You know?
It's almost like you could take all of Tim Burton's movies and put them each under their own snow globe. And like it just they all exist within their own globe, you know what I mean? Their own little world where usually there's snow or ice chips falling on people.
Yeah, and I don't know if he hasn't ever done an out and out horror. I think the most horror film he's done is Sleepy Hollow, maybe.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, yes, and gory too. That one.
Yeah.
But like one of my favorite movies of his is not even close to that, and that's Big Fish. I think
I've not seen that.
Oh my God, Barry, you gotta watch.
McGregor.
Watch Big Fish, especially as a father. Watch Big Fish. It's basically about a father and son essentially, and storytelling, and it's wonderful movie. Again, I think it's definitely in my top 5, if not my top 3 Tim Burton movies. It's so good, so good. But yeah, anyway, it's funny, as I was talking, I thought of another director that might be on my Mount Rushmore, and people might not agree with it, but Kevin Smith. I love Kevin Smith movies, and I love what he's been able to do with, his career as a director is completely different from every other director's. And yet he's still successful. He still has a massive audience that just is ride or die for Kevin Smith. A lot of people poke at him and stuff, but you know, that's the kind of thing I want to cultivate is an audience that really likes my stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I'll ever be a big a Cameron sized director, you know, that'd be nice. But if I end up just doing smaller independent stuff like Kevin Smith, you know, the rest of my career, then that's fine too. So yeah, I like kind of both things.
Yeah, and Kevin Smith's kind of like Tim Burton in his own way. He has his own style of filmmaking. When you watch a Kevin Smith movie, you know it's a Kevin Smith movie.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Tim Burton. But I know we spoke about it online a couple of days ago. I just recently watched Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and I was surprised at how good it was because I heard really bad things. So I thought I'll not watch it. But it took me back. It took me as soon as I saw Shannon Elizabeth as Justice on TV. There's something in my brain that just took me back to 2001 when I watched Jay and Silent Bob and American Pie 2, and I'm just like, oh, this is so nostalgic. And I can't believe how it's making me feel. And then obviously the chasing Amy scenes and the mall rats at the start, and I'm just like, this is good. This is really good. You know,
Clerks 3 is even better in my opinion. I have you seen Clerks 3?
I've not seen any Clerks movie.
Oh my God, really?
I know.
Wow.
I don't know why.
Whoa.
Don't know why.
That's crazy. No, I love the Clerks movies, but Clerks 3, it's really like a filmmaker's movie because they decide to make a movie about their lives as clerks, and it's got just a emotional wallop of a third act, and it's so fucking good. So I mean, Kevin is absolutely a talented dude, and it's funny. I was just listening to his newest podcast that he put out with Ralph Garman, Hollywood Babylon. It's a wonderfully funny show. It's been going for 15 years, but he talked about working with, oh God, what's his name? What's that rapper's name with the glasses that's really, really popular? Logic. So apparently he was hanging out with Logic, and Logic talked about how he wanted to make movies like Kevin, and Kevin's like, well, dude, why don't you just do it? And he's just like, yeah, I guess I could, huh? Because Logic's got a lot of money. He's a very, very successful dude. So Logic decided to make the script that he had and bring Kevin on as an advisor. And Kevin was watching, and this is speaking to your comment about Kevin's movies looking the same. He's like, Logic just, he would just say like, hey, what if we, you know, what would it take to have the camera like go upside down as we go down this hallway? And he's like, and the DP's like, well, we would need this rig and but we could do it, you know? And he's just like, how long would it take? It's like 3 hours or so. And so they did it. And Kevin's like, I'm editing the movie. And when I see the shot, I'm like, holy shit, this is cinema. He's like, I never do anything like this because I just want to get people out and get them home early. He's like, but now I'm watching like everything that he did, like taking the time to do. He's like, it took 3 hours to do it, but that's a kick-ass moment in the movie. He's like, so I'm going to take that into the next movie I make. He's making a new Jay and Silent Bob movie in October. He's literally going to try and change his style because he's like, oh shit, taking the extra time he's like, burden. It's not a burden to these people to take extra time to make it cool because they're paid to be there anyway, you know, like, so make it worth their time by making it as cool as it can be. And so it's funny. He after his long career is growing as a filmmaker. You know, it's I love that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny we're talking about Kevin Smith because he's also a director that does meta a lot, especially in Jay and Silent Bob, the reboot. They're telling the audience that they're rebooting Jay and Silent Bob without thinking it themselves, you know. So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and they were in Scream 3, right?
They were in Scream 3 as well, yeah. They said that there's that Gail Weathers chick or something they were saying. So yeah, it kind of comes full circle. Obviously, it's Miramax that does all those ones. We've got another couple of questions coming in. Apollo Balboa, that's a good name. Nice. 1985. Hello, gentlemen. Question: for an act to be immoral, one must intend the evil. That being said, did Michael Myers commit immoral acts if he had no conscience and the ability to know what was evil? But I would say that maybe not, because he's not in jail, he's not in prison, he's in an insane asylum. So there has to be a kind of level of I don't know how they would do it in the US, but the in the UK, if there's someone who is insane, they won't go to prison. They'll go to like a mental institution. So they're incarcerated, but it's almost like it's not their fault, which I don't agree with most of the time, but it's not their fault. I don't know how it works with you guys. Would that be the case?
I disagree with the first part of the statement, so it's hard for me to buy into the second part.
Right.
For an act to be immoral, one must intend evil. I disagree. I think literally doing something immoral is doing something without morals. You don't have morals, so you do something. You're not doing it to be evil. I mean, Michael Myers commits immoral acts. He doesn't necessarily know he's committing immoral acts, but he doesn't have morals about it, so it's an immoral act. I mean, just by simple definition.
Well, that's true, yeah.
So I don't think evil intent is necessary for something to be immoral. I think immoral acts can be inherently evil depending on what the act is, and so thus the person that can't, that's doing these kinds of things, like again, there's more to it than just not having a conscience, right? Michael Myers, depending, right, should be smart enough to see that he's making these people very unhappy when he's stabbing them. You know what I mean? So it's more than just having, no conscience. He also doesn't, I guess that kind of covers no conscience is just such a blanket term that it covers him not really caring that these people are crying and dying and not happy. So he might stop for that reason as opposed to the moral reason, but I don't know.
The question's too deep. It's a deep question. Let's get into a better question. Will you watch the new Final Destination movie? Are you a fan of the Final Destination franchise?
I love the Final Destination movies.
Yeah,
again, I'm a big gore hound, and I love creative kills, and that's literally what those movies are for. So
yeah. I mean, I don't mind gore movies if they've got good intentions, like the build-ups to the kills in the Final Destination movie. So I'm looking forward to it. I hear they're going in a different direction.
Good. I think it's time to shake that one up.
Yeah.
I think we're fine with that.
Yeah. Jean asked, Cecil, is there a director you'd love to meet or would have loved to have met? So past or present.
Yeah, Wes. I would love to have met Wes, and I mean, God, if he was still around when we made Dylan's New Nightmare, I would love to have heard what he thought about it. But the closest I've gotten is a couple people close to the franchise have told me that Wes would have been proud of this, and so that's meant a tremendous amount for me.
Yeah, that would be nice if you got a little message from Wes to say well done. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Jamie said Big Fish is so good. I'll definitely need to check it out. Pam even said as well, I love Big Fish. One of my favorite movies ever. I mean,
it's so good.
I know about it. I just never gave it the time of day, but everyone seems to be loving it, so I'll need to add it to my watch list. Jamie also said Kevin Smith deserves some love. He's done great work over the years. I mean, his first few films, apart from Clerks, because I haven't seen it, but Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Jay and Silent Bob, Strike Back, these were all films that I grew up loving so much. I even liked Jersey Girl.
I like Jersey Girl too, yeah.
Yeah, people, like, even in Jay and Silent Bob, the reboot, they shit on it in the reboot. I liked it. I thought it was really good. So
I've been wanting, he's shown the extended version of Jersey Girl twice, but I've not been able to see it. I'm very curious what that looks like.
Is it going to be available digitally?
He has no. He just uses it every now and again as a special showing at his theater. Right. So no, I don't think he plans to release it at any point. He doesn't have control over the releases of those movies anymore. The Miramax stuff. All he owns is Jay and Silent Bob.
Right. Okay. It doesn't own Blunt Man and Chronic.
No, he doesn't even own Clerks technically.
I guess that kind of Jay and Silent Bob reboot is about his life as well. Like not owning the characters. There is a scene at the end. When did Clerks 3 come out? Was it 2022 or something?
Yeah, I think so.
Because there is a scene at the end of Jay and Silent Bob reboot when Jay and Silent Bob are hanging about the store, and then you see the owner of the store going up to open up the Clerks store, and then it cuts. And I thought, was that going to be like the beginning of Clerks 3 or something? I don't know.
I mean, he knew Clerks 3 was next, so he put them back where they needed to be in Clerks 3. But he's he's very cognizant of all of that as he's writing and stuff. But actually, the Clerks 3 that we got was the second version of the script. He wrote an entirely different version that he's done table reads with the actors. He's done table reads of that version of Clerks 3 as again live programming, and I'm very curious what that would look like as well, because he said it was vastly different. But the one we got, I was more in shambles at the end of that movie than I'd been in a very, very long time.
Right. Obviously I'll need to watch the first two.
Yeah, absolutely do that. But I mean, they take place over the course of, I mean, obviously 1994, I think, was the first one, and the last one was 2022. So it was like every 13 years, like, or so, there was a new Clerks. So it's like different stuff, like these guys' lives, how they've changed in that amount of time is so interesting to see and everything. So
yeah, no, definitely. I'm 100% going to check them out. You okay to go for another few minutes?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Next Gen asked, how would you feel about Gail being the opening kill in Scream 7? Maybe she finally finished Dewey's book and is promoting it live on air. Would you like to see the end of Gail?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd love to see the end of anyone that carries weight, as long as it's done well. I don't care if they kill Sydney. Like, I thought that Sydney should be the killer at some point after so many years of being fucked with. She just loses it and goes nuts. Or Gail, either one.
Yeah, well, I agree as well. And I also think that there's only so many people and so many times that random people can go after Sidney Prescott to say, I'm copying the previous killers. So I think in this one, if there's someone coming after Sydney, it has to be somebody that knows her, or at least a previous killer, like, I don't know, Stu maybe. I just feel like if there's going to be killers in this one coming after Sydney yet again, it has to be different, not just two people that met each other online and have a beef with society. They need to be related. There needs to be something else about it. But yeah, going back to Gail, I don't mind that if Gail dies. At the beginning of the film, I don't know. I actually like to see new characters at the beginning of a Scream film and then being killed off, because we know whoever's at the beginning of a Scream film is going to die. So if you see Gail at the beginning of Scream, you'll be like, so she's probably going to die. I know the rules changed a little with Tara surviving Scream 5 at the beginning. But generally, people die at the beginning of a Scream film. So if Gail's at the beginning, there's a good chance then that it's kind of spoiled for you. Whereas,
I agree. I agree with that point. That's another reason why I liked 6, though, is that beginning was an expectation subversion. You know, we're so used to how it happened. I liked that they changed it. And it's funny, I don't know if you know, I don't know if how many people in the audience know, but the head, that the Ghostface whose head was in the refrigerator, that head is the head of Tom Newell, the guy that edited Dylan's New Nightmare.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. He told me that after the fact. He's like, "Did you see me in Scream 6 or Scream 7 or Scream 6?" I was like, "No, where were you?" He's like, He sent me a picture of the head in the refrigerator. He's like, "Yeah, they did a mold of my head for this."
Oh, wow! So he plays Greg's dead head.
Yep, he's technically a Ghostface.
Oh, there you go. Do you know what? I think I remember you saying that online.
Yeah,
and
I think one time.
Yeah, I never put 2 and 2 together. But yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? Being a victim of Ghostface and one of
and being a Ghostface, yeah.
Oh yeah, well that's 2 then, 2 for 1. Absolutely, that's brilliant. I love hearing little kind of stories like that you're like, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Anfood Movie Mania has asked, could we possibly see in Scream 7 victims from previous films that were not on screen that have escaped Ghostface and come forward to tell their story to help others? It's possible. I mean, I feel like Sydney is the one to do that. But if you have more than one, like we had Kirby in Scream 6 to do that as well, to be honest. Who else would you bring back to do that, though, to tell their story?
I don't know, but I kind of like the idea of a Ghostface recovery group. Right? It's just a group of people that get together to talk about, it's just like AA.
Yeah.
Just GA, but and then one of that crew, starts to kill off the rest and is the Ghostface or something. Like, I don't know, there's some interesting things to do if you did bring back those people. The problem is they're probably such small roles that how many people are going to recognize them as characters or care about them, you know?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, apart from the new cast all surviving Scream 6, who else survived Ghostface? Just Mark Kincaid?
Well, yeah, the main characters, basically. That's about
Yeah.
it, usually.
So it would have to be a group of potentially the main cast, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, it's been so long since I've watched them all. I wouldn't be able to say, well, what about this person or that person?
Yeah. Well, there might be.
You're probably right. You're probably right now that I think about it. You're probably right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, unless you could have people just being random saying, "Oh, I survived Ghostface in 2014. One time he tried to kill me," and maybe people are like, "Oh, did that really happen?" And then you could question it. And maybe they're a Ghostface killer. You never know.
That'd be
Something like
cool. Kind of, it almost gives you an avenue to Avengers Endgame it, where you go and you show scenes like someone almost got killed by Ghostface at the house party in Scream 1, you know, and then another person, you just jam them into those old movies with like little scenes.
Yeah.
And, like you just have like, you know, the actors just in the background, you know, as they go by or some shit.
Exactly like Hawkins from Halloween Kills.
Yeah.
When he goes back to the flashback scenes and he's the one that took down Michael and stuff.
Yeah,
Easily
exactly.
Do something like that. Yeah, absolutely. Missed my place there. Asaya. Oh, sorry. Asaya? I think it's Asaya. Apologies if I've butchered your name. Do you think Scream 7 would be the best Scream movie in the franchise, but not better than the 1996 Scream movie? Well, it can't. It's got the potential, especially with the return of Neve Campbell and Kevin Williamson directing. So
yeah,
it's got the potential.
Look, fucking the Toxic Avenger movie when it comes out could win an Oscar. You know, there's lots of things that could happen, but you know, it's very dependent. It's very dependent.
Yeah. How do you feel about Kevin Williamson directing his second movie?
I say go for it. You know, why not? The other one was what, Teaching Mrs. Tingle I you know, I wasn't a big fan of that movie, but he's you know, he knows his way around a good slasher. Clearly, he writes them. So I'm fine with that. Like, why not? It makes total sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, I recently rewatched Teaching Mrs. Tingle, and it's definitely got a Scream vibe, obviously because it's Kevin Williamson, he wrote and directed it. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do as a director. He will have influence. I know that the writers are just the same as the writers as before on Scream 6, but the writing was a big issue for me for Scream 6. But I think with Kevin Williamson beside those guys, maybe he can say, oh, maybe you could change that. I'm not going to tell you what to write, but maybe you could do this and that.
He can course correct. He's like, I'm not going to tell you what to write, but I'm fucking telling you what to write.
He done it for Halloween H2O. He didn't write Halloween H2O, but he was there. And he's like, change that a little bit and change this. And it turned out to be a really quite slick script, thanks to Kevin Williamson. So
I've got an SNL sketch in my head where it's like the new writers opposite the table of Kevin, and he like suggests something and they're like, well, maybe, and then he just like stretches and like points behind him at a bunch of fucking writing awards or something, you know?
Listen to me.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll kind of get it wrapped up a little bit. If anybody's got any more questions, you can certainly we've got another person coming in there, sorry. Nettie RG says, hiya, little late, but here, rewinding. Apologies, but we're just about to finish. We're almost at 2 hours, so we'll kind of cut it soon. It's 12:45 a.m. for me, so it's getting a little late for me.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but it was great having you on, Cecil, and just kind of talking about this whole meta thing. And I think there's more to be discussed with meta. Like I've just kind of thought about Kevin Smith. You know, he's been part of the whole meta thing since the beginning, you know, since Mallrats, I guess, because the Clerks characters were in Mallrats, weren't they? I'm sure, at least one or two of them.
Well, Jay and Bob were,
Yeah. So it's almost like, in fact, I was going to say maybe he started it, but he didn't. Obviously, Scream came out in '96. But yeah, do you know any other directors that would or do have that kind of style? Before we go, like Kevin Smith.
There's other movies that. Well, I mean, realistically, the the Scary Movie series were very meta about the comedy. You know, it's a form of meta. And then there's movies like, if I'm not mistaken, It Stains the Sands Red is a movie about making a horror movie where a slasher starts killing the people making the horror movie about him. You know, like there's definitely some other meta horror movies out there that have come afterwards that are fun. You know, they do a good job. So it's definitely out there. I'm trying to think of, fucking Human Centipede 2 is a meta movie, because the crazy dude that sews a bunch of freaks together. I'm sorry, I can't say freaks. It's been so long since I've seen it. Sews a bunch of people together. He's watching the first Human Centipede on the TV, like jerking off with sandpaper at the beginning of the movie. So like there's a lot of other things that go meta. It's not always super pretty, but a lot of it's been, you know, there's a lot of it at this point. So we could realistically do a part 2 of this and just dive into other movies that go that route and stuff. It might be kind of fun.
I'd really have to actually look at some of them, because all when you think of meta, you think Wes Craven, and you don't really focus on everything else. But when you think about it, there are other movies, possibly other franchises that potentially do the same thing, but in a more subtle way. But yeah, absolutely, it's something that we could certainly discuss again. I'll do a couple more questions, guys. Again, I'm going to call it a wrap soon. With StreamYard, if you do under 2 hours, you get a potential to generate AI clips. So it takes out like 30 to 60 second clips and makes it a little YouTube short for you. And if I go over 2 hours, it doesn't allow me to do that. So we'll try and keep it under 2 hours, so I can take out some little clips that might be interesting for folk. Scared Straight Productions asked, I'll ask it anyway. Do you guys think Nancy will be back for a Nightmare reboot or sequel? If there's an official movie franchise of Nightmare, would you like to see Nancy come back?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it'd be, well, no, but I have reasons for saying no. But I think it would be, you know, enjoyable. It just would depend on what they're doing with it. Like, are they bringing her? Is it a sequel to New Nightmare? Is it a sequel to the regular series where she's died already? You know, that might be hard to do. So, like, you know, someone needs to write a version that would be the best version for Heather's last movie and Robert's last movie. I don't know who that person's going to be, but hopefully they write something soon. Yeah.
So maybe not come back as Nancy, maybe come back as Heather.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe both.
Yep. Nancy or Heather. Enough said. Connor Kerr said, would you guys like a proper season 3 of Scream finishing the Brandon James story? Well, I don't know if we discussed it on air, but you've seen season 3?
Yeah.
I haven't.
I enjoyed season 3. Okay. I thought it was well, it's been so long. My mind is telling me I remembered enjoying season 3.
Right.
I liked season 2 more than I liked season 1. But I think I did like season 3. I either liked season 3 the most or hated it. But I'm pretty sure I liked it. Because they brought back the voice and the mask, right?
Yeah, the Ghostface mask, and it was Paris Jackson that was in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that season at all because it wasn't connected to the first 2 seasons. I didn't bother watching it. I might watch it. It's
worth it. I mean, if you're doing a Scream podcast, you should probably watch it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think because obviously there's only 6 Scream movies, so if I can dive into all the Scream episodes, then that obviously beefs it up a little bit for me as well.
Oh yeah.
And of course, with the channel being called The Morgue, it's very heavily influenced through Noah from Scream season 1 and 2. So I would kind of look into it. However, I would love to see a proper season 3 that finishes the Brandon James story, because I thought that was interesting. I like the look of the Ghostface killer in it as well, or we wouldn't even call it Ghostface. It's just Brandon James. So it was something that I would like to see redone, and I loved all the characters as well. So
fair enough.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think we've come to the end of the road for tonight, Cecil. It was an absolute pleasure having you on for my pilot episode 1.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
No, it's not a problem at all. It's good chat, good banter, and hopefully we can get some more of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And good luck on all the other episodes, and good luck on Mikey 2 Scoops.
Yeah, it's good. It's called double scoops, not Mikey two scoops.
Oh, sorry, Mikey double scoops.
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want. I don't mind. But yeah, anyway, guys, I will read all the comments. What I tend to do is when I go back onto the live, when I go back and watch these videos, I still keep the live chat up there so I can comment on some things that maybe I've forgotten to. And if you've got a question for either myself or Cecil after this, then you can always leave a comment down below and we can certainly get to them anyway. But before we go, Cecil, for anyone watching you who doesn't know who you are, then where can they find you?
I'm at the Horror Show channel on YouTube. So if you just, type in the Horror Show channel or type in Dylan's New Nightmare, you can get to the channel through Dylan's New Nightmare or just through the Horror Show channel. The problem is there's a lot of horror shows on YouTube. So
yeah,
the easiest thing is probably just search for Dylan's New Nightmare and click on the channel icon there. But yeah, we've got a lot going on. We're going to be starting a show this next Friday called Horror from the High Desert, and we're going to have Davey Deathray and Jason from Sinister Cinema, and then Braden Timmons as well. So we're all out here in the hot Phoenix sun. So we're going to do a show, and then I'm starting a show with Luke from Confused Reviews, and eventually starting a show with Dave McCrae as well. So all that'll be coming soon on the channel as monthly live shows.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll leave the links down below, just in case someone can't find you. I'll leave the link to your channel down below anyway.
Thank you.
People can just easily access it that way as well. But it was an absolute pleasure again having you on, Cecil, and hopefully we can get some more in there and chat some more, possibly Scream, possibly Halloween as well. You never know. But anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye. And before I go, guys, I do apologize. I keep forgetting to do this. Let me just do the outro. Bye.
I'll be right back. What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
Someone's in the